Kala, take only one particular aspect of her and call this as Mahākālī. Because for me, I was always, right from the beginning, I was saying that I don't want to show Mahākālī as the one that we see normally with all that skulls and all that, and with her tongue out, and then doing real. I mean, it looks very, very frightening. I won't say it is grotesque. It's frightening for us. But she has that aspect of being the one who actually. I mean, for me, I have gone through Shankaracharya's Saundarya Lahari, where he talks about she being the one who is who is the bija, who is the one who actually created this entire universe. So from there, I want to take. I don't want to just take one aspect of it. The Kala actually is the time aspect of it is one thing that is very, very interesting for me. So finally, we actually spoke together. We read together these things, the translations. Thanks to Shastri for his actual patience with me, because I would actually read them out and then try to understand what the different aspects of her, and also the different aspects of these Shumbha, Nishumba, Rakta Bija and all that. What made them Asuras is something that I was wanting to get into. So I would say that all of us have put together our ideas into it, and finally narrowed down upon taking one aspect of her where she becomes the one. She symbolizes the time. Okay, so from there it goes on, and thanks to one of those rare collections that Shastri had, and also Katyani also actually remembered it when we were trying to get into this, where she talked about the Kala being the different time zones, and we were trying to put all these two together. So that's how we arrived at this particular aspect, where she becomes the one who actually is the seed for the entire creation, who creates everything. But at the same time, when there comes a time when if everything is going out of balance, she would come again into the picture and then devour everything. So it is a kind of a cycle of creation and protecting the entire thing, and then going in like that, like the Srishti Sthiti Laya that we call. So this is how we arrived at this particular thing, but it was not very easy to arrive at this. It really took a long time for us to get into this. I mean, months were going on, and then finally we were saying, where are we going? How do we start? Where do we start? So, but suddenly it started on the day of Vijayadasami, and it went on. So that's what I have to say about choosing this particular idea of Mahākālī.
And what was your entry point into choreographing this work? Was it parallelly that you had the certain incidents translate to movement, and then music was created to suit it? Or did you have ideas of certain music elements and then movement was created? How did you go about creating the movement and the music of this work?
In fact, I didn't want to do anything that is stock, because normally in a choreography, what happens is I take a song. That's what will happen in any of the classical works that we do in classical dance, compositions that we do. We take a composition and try to fit into that and try to translate that particular idea into movement. But here there is just an idea of time, which can be as big as this universe. And then I am also very conscious of the fact that, of late it has become that I don't want to use anything that is being regularly used. Something new has to come out of it, but something which is appropriate and which would translate the idea that I have into movement and also reach my audience. That's my final goal. That, I cannot do things for my own self. I'm going public. So somebody who is watching it should also understand it. So trying to negotiate all these things, it started with just the idea. In fact, this is entirely a reverse process that I have gone through. We have all gone through, because there is no lyric, there is no music. I was just doing a particular movement and trying to choreograph that on my dancer, Katyani, because For the past more than 2 years, I was telling her that you should be my Durga, my Devi. That's what I was telling her. And suddenly this fell into place. I was wanting to make her dance in that particular character. So when I was doing that, I was trying to work with her. So we started with that Kala thing in the beginning, like how Kala Pramanam is different in different time zones, where I was just wanting to work on with hastas. Because for Kuchipudi, especially we hear so many stories about Vedantam Lakshminarayan Shastri Garu doing a lot of experimentation with only the hastas. People even today talk about that. They say that, the way that he showed different hastas used to be very mesmerizing. I mean, he created a kind of a vocabulary which was not captured at all, which was captured only in the memory of several others. So I was trying to, it started with one particular day. We thought, I don't know, I want to use hastas which actually suggest something, like, like for instance, Vishnu, we use normally the Tripataka hastas. I didn't want to do that. The first hasta that I showed to Katyani, saying that I don't want to use these hastas. I would want my Vishnu to be like this, because he is on the Seisha Saina, Seisha Talpa. So this has to come in. So that's how from there we went on to each and everything and tried to also not leave the roots. We consulted extensively Natya Shastra, Abhinaya Darpana, Abhinaya Darpana Grandhantara Hastas, and also Bharatarnava. These are the various texts that we consulted and tried to look into different hastas that actually are given in the Shastra to indicate time. But unfortunately, what happened was it was only Mushti or a Pataka Hasta or a Suchi Hasta. That's all. So we tried to improvise upon certain things. Like, for instance, for 4, they say that you can use Langula Hasta. And for 10, you can use Mukula Hasta. So for somewhere I used this for 14, this particular Hasta. So we have tried to bring in our own creativity into it, our own interpretation of what the Shastra says. And also in some contexts, the sound of that particular, like, Truti is one. Truti is, for me, is quick. One particular a second, a fraction of a second. So that Truti will be only this for me. So a lavam is something. So some of them, for me, we try to create, for instance, Yugam, Mahayugam. When we were saying Mahayugam, we tried to put together the 4 yugas and make it Mahayuga. Mahayuga is complete in its own self. So that way, I suppose we tried our level best to try to interpret these things. So this is one thing. The other thing is about the hastas, the movement part of it, where I was trying to look at the Asuras especially. It was basically trying to bring out that particular. There are 3 aspects of Asuras. One is that lust for power, lust for women, and the third aspect is they are the ones who would break the dharma. So these are the 3 things that make the Asuras. Okay. So when that happens, I was trying to actually show that particular aspect of, very suggestively show it, but not leave the traditional Yakshagana movement patterns. I was using the rounds where they use it in Yakshaganas. When there is an Asura character coming in, there are particular moves that are there. But we tried to go to the roots of it, make it much more befitting to the kind of idea that we were trying to bring out. So I tried to negotiate between the traditional movement patterns and also try to bring out the idea that I have of an Asura into this. So this is how the entire movement has developed. So once this movement has developed, especially for Mahākālī also, when we were doing this movements, it was that, the hands. We normally say that, it is just, she has that 10 hands, or whatever it is. But it is not also very easy for Mahākālī. I mean, every time she has to take a different form altogether to, in order that she defeats. I mean, it's basically dependent upon the power of the person whom she is encountering. Raktabija, Shumba, Nishumbas are all great scholars also. For instance, if you read Devi Mahatyam or, or Devi Saptasati, in the 8th chapter, this person, Raktabija, Shumba Nishumba, come into the battlefield and say that, you're so beautiful. Why should you be into this? Do you understand the intensity of being in a battlefield and things like that? So they are trying to do that, but at the same time, how she actually recreates herself every time when they are trying to, capture her and things like that. It is very interesting when you. So all these ideas, all this reading has made me do what I have done. Basically, it is not premeditated that I want to do this movement and things, not at all a premeditated one. So when the hands are coming, it is not that that she is happily doing it. She wants to do it, she has to encounter them. So she is trying to take that different form altogether and then do this. So we tried all these things. It was basically trying to look at it. We would take a video of it and say whether this is coming right or not, but I was not getting the right kind of move. So I have to ask Katyani to do it in a different way altogether. Probably put your elbow back and then try and do this. So this is how it was not an easy process. She has to undergo a lot of pain. So do I. So, but finally these movements came out. After the movement, actually it was Diyashvi Shastri who actually saw these movements. Right from the beginning, we were all we came to an understanding that we are not doing anything that is regularly being done. Okay, we are trying to leave that. First of all, we are trying to put any of the traditional things into it. We are sticking to the tradition, but at the same time, we are not trying to bring in different ragas and things like that. We want to do something that comes into our mind when we are doing this. So that's how Shastri saw the movements and then set the music for it. This is entirely a different process. And also the verses, when we were talking about. So earlier we thought, probably we would use some verses into it, from Devi Mahatyam or anything like that. But these verses also, shall I continue? Yeah. So these verses also were a part of a byproduct of our reading. For instance, Kala 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 Rupini, or Shumba Nishumba, Rakta Bijadi, that all these comes in. These are all things that came to us. And then, seeing those descriptions of in the Devi Bhagavatam. So that's how the entire process is reversed. First the movement and the music, and then came the lyrics. So all these are put together. Finally, of course, we presented it before our Srinath, and he actually did the final part of it. So this is how it came out.
Thank you so much for that. So I was going to tell you that the use of hastas was something that I very first noticed, and I think one of the things that has come out of this production, personally for me, is this innovative use of hastas. I think that's a contribution to a larger classical world by this work. My next question is for you and Katyani, Anuman, you and Katyani both, is what were your challenges as a choreographer and as a performer? Because to dance in stage is completely different than the lens of the camera. The eye that sees in the audience is so different. What were the challenges that you encountered, or how was it different or difficult for you, both of you? I think Katyani, you should go first.
So I knew that it's not the same at all, dancing for the camera and dancing for stage. I knew it's not the same. And I think the first question I asked Srinath was, I don't even know how to pose for the camera, forget dance. Tell me how to do it. So he just said, be real, be very real, and just stay true to whatever you have to do. So actually, I think the bigger challenge was for Srinath more than for me or ma'am, because we were so caught up in our own process of discovering Mahākālī and putting together a story that we didn't really think of whether this will be for the camera or not. We just went with the flow. We just absolutely went with the flow of whatever the work was, the way it was building. Because there itself we had many challenges, because never have we not worked with the music in place. with the, we know which jati to choreograph to, we know which lyric to choreograph to. So this was completely undoing all the process that we had been used to until then. So for the longest time, we would just have tak dhimmi, and we would just keep dancing to that and choreographing to that. Then we'll show that to sir, and he will create one jati for it or something like that. So there was a lot of back and forth amongst the three of us itself. And finally, we just left it to him to adapt it to the camera. We said, you do what you want to do. This is the work. So I think you should ask him also what his challenges were. But
Yes,
also
I'll
next question. But also the thing is, we were very aware that while certain things are lost when you're dancing for the camera, certain things, possibilities open up, like close-ups, like just showing the hands or just focusing on one thing, and so we were very aware of that, and we wanted to actually exploit that part too. And there's no need for a very specific kind of continuity, which I loved personally as a dancer, because usually you end at a place, you have to begin from that same place to go to the next one. But here we could do multiple things, multiple directions, and so that was interesting for me as a dancer. I like that part of it. But I think Srinath, you should probably step in and talk about
I think
your
we'll go to
challenges.
Anurag first, and then
Okay,
Sheena
sure.
can tell us what were your challenges in approaching this work.
Sure.
Definitely, the lack of continuity is one thing. In a way, that was an advantage. Like, I was trying to stop somewhere, and I don't need to give a kind of complete finishing to something. I was leaving it open so that it is the director of the film who would take it to the next level. That's one advantage. And also the other part of it is that we had some ideas which were very, very juvenile, and now I realize it. I was telling Sheena that only the hastas should come in. I want the hastas to be highlighted. So he said, no, ma'am, it looks very odd if you're just showing the hastas. So he actually made it look so rich when it came to the first part of it. And of course, because of the camera, we were conscious that even the minute expressions or the minute body movements that we would probably do they will be highlighted. So when we were doing the Asura, the Mahāsuri, when I would show, and then the Asura, I used only very, very minute movements, not very big movements or anything like that, because we know in camera they would definitely get highlighted. I don't need to do that nrittam that is needed and things like that. I was only using very I would say that the movements are very limited in nature, and
they were very controlled. They were very controlled
and limited. That's what we were very conscious of that particular fact, because because the camera is so close, or it can capture such minute moments, that even a step, more, expression, if you're giving it more, it looks really grotesque. So we would end up showing it more grotesque. So that's where we were conscious that, they should be very controlled. The movement should be very controlled. And we did not use, especially even in the last the part of it, that we were trying to only show Mahākālī as, at the end of it, when she is going into the battlefield. It's only the movement that is being exploited there, rather than she going or going on the lion. She goes on into the battlefield. We only did the body movement part of it, rather than doing a particular foot movement or something which we normally do if it is a stage performance. So that's where we try to limit some things and highlight some other things. So this is a very, very beautiful experience for us also. And also some advantages are there, which were, of course, probably Srinath will talk about it, probably we thought it were advantages. I don't know how grueling it was for him to actually capture that. So Yeah.
Yeah, Srinath, before you answer, I think I would like to modify my question a bit for you is, what were your challenges? Because I know that you have created a film Padam, which is using ballet and a traditional Padam, but that is something that you choreographed and you directed it. Whereas here, it was somebody else's choreography, it was your direction, and it was a very traditional work in that sense that it is a framework that you primarily have worked with contemporary. I mean, yeah, you have worked with Kuchipudi also, but your base has been contemporary. So, looking at that lens, what were your challenges and how did you go about certain things? We can't hear you, Srinath.
Sorry, I have some mute. So the biggest challenge was for me to understand that there is a whole different inner landscape going on with classical collaborations. There's historical narratives to geographical aesthetics. So I had to understand that first. Well, in contemporary, you have more so of that freedom, but in classical dancing, you have a lot more going on. And for me, it was very important to understand the form itself and the historicity of the form and stay true to that. And the second part was to make sure that I'm kind of bridging a gap between the traditional material that is available on camera and what would viewers see. So for me, the biggest challenge, possibly the biggest challenge, was to understand the nuances of choreography that were happening. So for every time I'm kind of thinking, is this Kuchipudi or were they trying to do something else? Where do I put the camera and what is the impact that is going to create? Ultimately, my job as a filmmaker was to make people feel what we write on paper or what we program in our mind. It's how does it make people feel at the end of the what are people taking away after they watched the film, and also the biggest challenge was also to see how are we representing Kali with colors and the set and the light and what are we trying to do here, right? So for me, I had to push in my own narratives here, take some liberty out of the choreographer and the performer, and say, can I push in this narrative, which is also my first question with the collaborators was are we sticking to the modern definitions of time, or are we looking at it as a philosophical definition of time, right? So for me, Kali, when I'm representing as a whole universe, when she gave me the description, Anuradha Garu gave me the description of she being the seed for which everything exists, almost like a concept we have in Hinduism of Brahman or something like that, where the reason for everything that exists, right? For me, I wanted to kind of capture a modern narrative to that. So we now know that there's a lot more dark matter in the universe, and that kind of strangely is running the game of constellations in place, stars in place. So I kind of imagined a lot of darkness. So with that comes enormous challenges of how do we represent color here? So the makeup and stuff. So that's the whole reason where we had to kind of create a set of sand so that I have some kind of reflection of light happening. So it was a very conscious decision of taking that, and at the same time, we also had to work with the challenges of the way they choreographed it. Was incredibly challenging because they had these set modules that were happening in very, very, very complex narratives. She was going down and then there were things happening with the arms, and also sometimes in the process of trying to kind of get creative composition on camera, I was afraid that I might lose out on the theory aspect of it, the intent aspect of it. I didn't want to just place fancy angles to make sure that, oh, it looks good on camera, but why do we do that? Why did we do that? So I wanted to keep it very true to what they're trying to do, and make sure that I kind of elevate it for the viewer experience.
Were there points of tension? Sorry, I have a very personal question, but because I think there would be, but I don't know, because Anu ma'am comes from a very traditional setup, and then there is you with a very contemporary approach. Were there points of tension in there?
Well, I feel I kind of stick to this philosophy. I wouldn't call it tension. I would call it friction.
Yes, that's what I meant. Friction. Yeah.
And I think it's so important to have friction for art to come out. And that's what it makes it more meaningful and beautiful. And I was actually looking forward to that kind of friction as well. For sure. I mean, my biggest challenge was to actually understand what they were trying to create. But there's so much happening on that particular desk when she sent me a picture. Katyani sent me a picture of a couple of pages, and all I did was to kind of catch my head and understand, like, what are these guys trying to do? And I'm kind of intimidated. It is a kind of an intimidating picture in the first 7 days, I believe. Like, these guys are trying to get a lot of books into picture and trying to get these complex stuff. So how am I able to kind of capture that? So in a nutshell, yes, there were a couple of tensions, and that's what makes it more meaningful and much more learning experience. This project probably would be a single most challenging project I've done in my entire life, because of the art, the kind of art is involved, and the subject itself. Yeah.
You also started making films, dance films, before it was in vogue, way before. So I would like to know your thoughts on the future of dance films, especially keeping in mind that COVID is here to stay, or it seems like so, and we'll just have to deal with it. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I think Indian artists, the family of Indian artists are, especially performing artists, are intellectually capable to understand the language of cinema. It is not complex. As it seems, it might seem intimidating, but it is not as complex as they are. It's sort of like bridging the gap between two different worlds, but both of them have the same motive or the objective. But the future of dance films, I think the entire thing changed around March 2020, right? When we had a lockdown, and we've seen an influx of more films coming on board, and people also, I think we're still catching up to the true potential that we can probably display, catching up also to the scenes that are happening in Europe and US and other countries. But I'm sure once we kind of get into it full swing, I think we have a lot to offer with the kind of subjects that we deal within the subcontinent, and the potential to kind of exploit them with technology is insane. And I'm so kind of excited and stoked about that.
Yeah. And with directors like you, I'm definitely looking forward to what happens. Anu ma'am, coming back to you, actually we are running a little short on time, so last two questions. One is for Anu ma'am. Would you? I would like us to talk. I would like you to talk to us about the music of the film, specifically because you said that it is not traditional Kuchipudi music in that sense. Sorry, was I connected?
Yeah.
So it is not traditional. I mean, it is still within the tradition, but it is not what we see. It is something that's created for the film. So if you could just give us some insights into the music and the making of it.
In fact, I suppose it's Katyani who was sitting with us right from the beginning, from the day one when she planned this festival. She would come and say, "You're not doing what you have been doing until now." Both of us were attuned to that. Me and Shastri were attuned to that, saying that, "Ma'am, you're not doing what you have done earlier." Or Shastri sir, you're not doing, you have to, I mean, she was actually saying that, "Ma'am, you should talk to Shastri sir also and let him try and break away from that." But I would say, when they created that signature music, not of Mahākālī, but of the Gora festival itself, that by that time I would credit everything to them, especially when though ideas were coming from us, it was Shastri who has actually taken them forward. Like, he broke away from those, and especially you see that at the end the Gora comes in, and they were trying to experiment with different sounds, different things altogether. And when when we were thinking about the music part of it, especially, things just fell into place. When we were thinking that chenda should come in, or the traditional percussion instruments and cymbals that are actually involved in Bhagavati cult and all that should come into this particular music, somehow from somewhere from Kerala, one of my friends has arranged what was it, Katyan? Teyyam here. 4 days they were here. It was just, she mentioned to me that Shastri sir is thinking about getting this chenda and talam, madalam into this. So, and that was the day that I got an invitation from my friend here, saying that, that they are going to have Teyyam performance here, and the artists are, due to Corona, they have been really suffering a lot, and all of us should somehow come together and have this kind of this thing. They were doing it as a part of a ritual in their own house. So when it came about and she mentioned to him, I just mentioned to her that, that we would like to record this music of chenda and talam and Madhanam. She said, fine, gladly they agreed, and they came in, and then some pieces of it were, by that time choreography was not over at all. But we actually they recorded some, Shastri recorded some of those things and then kept it in stock. So that's how things fell into place. And whatever, when we are choreographing, especially the Kala Rupini, I was saying that I should get that Kala, it should be continuous, it should be going on like that. And he immediately captured all these ideas and translated that into music. So I think, it's basically this kind of a preparation that we are doing something new. We are trying to do it in resonance with the movement, the idea and the context there. Not because we want to do something new that we are bringing it and keeping it there. So that's one thing that I think, most of it, the entire translation of these ideas into music is Shastri's. He really worked, I suppose, very hard, actually bringing in different things together, orchestrate everything. And also he was singing them. And he sang and recorded things. I think he did the major part of the job of this particular Mahākālī thing, because he has to bring in so many things into the music part of it. I think more light can be thrown by Katyayani.
So actually what I realized at the end of it was all the verses that we used were written by people we know. Ma'am had written one verse, sir had written one verse, and sir's cousin had written one verse. Like, I didn't realize that it was all written, like just our idea that was translated into Sanskrit verses. But also, yeah, like ma'am said, the first thing when three of us sat down and spoke, I said, sir, don't do what we are doing. This should not be like anything that you've done so far. I don't want it to be like any of those 170 dance dramas that you've composed for so far. So I think that sort of stayed with him throughout. And there also there was a lot of friction and points, because he would come up with an idea. Like, for instance, that whole Asura section is only on a growl kind of a voice, there's nothing else there, which Srinath and I absolutely fell in love with. And then he wanted to change it because he said it's too monotonous, like for 2 minutes we cannot have the same thing. And we were like, there is no way we are letting you have anything else other than that. No way. So there was quite a bit of friction there, and but it's
Actually,
okay. I mean,
that Kala thing, when we were trying to show that universe, no, the universe being created. So I was wanting that when we were showing the Surya, the sun appearing, actually we got some sounds that that were recorded by NASA from these this thing, and then from the YouTube. So I have to get them, and I have to give those links and say that this is basically, earlier I said it is om, it's om kind of a sound. So he recorded it and gave it to us. Said no, not this. I want some sound which would actually resemble om, but it is not om. So that's how these sounds that we got from the NASA recordings, they are available on YouTube also. So he actually translated that. So when he was doing that, I said, sir, nor anandi adi vastundemo try cheyandi ante. Then he really tried a lot. I think it's not very easy. I mean, you can say things, but to bring them out it's real hard work. So he would always say, నేను పొద్దున్నే లేచి 4:30కి 5ంటికి రికార్డ్ చేసేస్తానండి ఇవన్నీ, అప్పుడు వాయిస్ కరెక్ట్ గా మీకు కావాల్సినంత బేస్ వస్తుంది. దట్స్ వాట్ హీ వాజ్ సేయింగ్. సో he really tried his best to bring out that. And I suppose Sheenaz was mentioning about this particular very interesting sound. He was saying that about that thing.
The soundscape was absolutely mind-boggling. When I heard it for the first time, I'm like, this, I mean, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is insane. Like, because there's so much happening, and obviously my understanding of Kuchipudi music and in large, like the Indian classical music, is very limited, and I acknowledge that. And this, I mean, I've seen a lot of dancing, but the composition and how the entire process takes place is so. So it was quite a thrilling experience to see him kind of do everything from scratch, and kind of set the base for everybody to kind of step in and do their work.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I mean, even though I have heard a lot of classical dance, I come from that background, this music was just, I was like, mind blown. Okay, on that note, a last question to all three of you. One incident of the shoot that is forever etched in your memory, I would like all of you to share. Any one incident, it can be anything.
Can it be
start
funny?
with Tatyani.
start
Sorry?
with me. I'll go last.
No, I was asking, can it be funny?
It can be anything. It can be funny. It can be not funny. Give us some behind the scenes secrets.
Srinath?
Okay, I'll go first and just wrap this up. So we were in the middle of the shoot, and I think it was around 2:30 a.m. in the morning, or 3 o'clock in the morning, and the entire crew and set were there in Ravindra Bharati. And I knew that we were depicting Asura on stage. And then we have this really sort of death metal kind of growl happening. And the speakers are completely in full volume on. And I was just kind of surprised that a couple of my volunteers were happily sleeping. Like, how can you sleep with that ground, right? Because I mean, honestly speaking, after the film production was done and we've done the last shot, the next 1 week I could hear that growl in my ears, right? And then we had volunteers and kind of a couple of people who came to help me with sleeping. And I mean, they've really worked hard to put up the set, and I then could understand that they were fatigued. But I was just looking at the sound and what's happening on the stage, and then we had these really
happily sleeping stretched out on 3 seats. And
well, poor things, it's 3 in the morning, so I think
know,
we can excuse them.
Yes.
Anu ma'am, any incident that you...
When it came to shooting, I suppose I left it entirely to the director. So I was not, for the first day I went, and then I was there for some time and then came back. But the thing is, when this is happening, first thing is, when we started with this project, we thought we would just record it on a video and then present it. But then the idea of Srinath, we saw his films also, tried. I mean, Tatyani could actually contact him, and he really agreed to that. Thanks to Srinath. But until I met him, I was a bit skeptical. What will these, we don't know how they would capture, whether my entire classical dance would go to, whether it would projected properly or not. But once we met, we all talked together, and he said that, he's been here and he knows about Kuchipudi and things like that. I made it very clear to him that, I want the dance to be, his question was, what do you want to project in that? So I said, it's the dance part of it which has to be highlighted, nothing else. So after I actually talked to him, I felt a bit comfortable. I was assured that this work would come out well. And he actually, but this music part of it, I think Mahākālī has something to do. That I had several, not just one, 2-3 weeks of sleepless nights. Especially this Kala 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 Rupini and all the Shumba Nishumba, Raktabij, Adi, it would, just don't, even when I'm sleeping, they're all going there. In my mind, they're haunting you. It was a difficult task to get rid of them. So the music part of it, and also the kind of movement, it was very uncomfortable kind of a time for me also, until I completed the entire thing and then said that I don't want to think about it at all. Let the shoot go on. I will just break away from that and go away from that. So this is what, we have undergone some kind of, I don't know what it was, but it was very, very challenging for us to handle this subject also. So personally, it was that. And of course, I was very, sometimes I would be very unhappy with Katyayani. I would say, that, this is, let me do it tomorrow. I will not do it today. And things like that. But somehow she has put up with all my idiosyncrasies or whatever it was. That, sometimes we would just take a break. 2-3 days, don't work. So she will come back again and then work. So it was not premeditated or anything like that. She would come and stand over there. I would say that I have an idea, we will work on this. Whether this will come in the beginning or the end or in the middle, we will put them together. So that's how this happened. It was
interesting.
These are some of the things that I could probably share. Katyayani.
Sand. All the so when Srinath first said let's have sand, I was like, in my mind I had rejected the idea because I thought the logistics is not possible, and just like 3 more days I can't do it,
and it's very difficult to dance on it.
That's what everyone told me.
I was very unhappy also when she mentioned sand. Inkavanna kavalana, that's what I said.
So when
we should have
I think if I could
said, I know that it's
No, let
so
me-
much dance on sand. And
Yeah.
we get done. I was asking her, do you know how difficult it is to dance on sand? No, ma'am, the break cheyalata. That it's difficult.
So I didn't think it was. Now, after having watched the film, I am very grateful to myself for having gone through that process of dancing on sand. But like there are so many scars on my feet from all the places the sand got in between the gungru and the it was fine, though he had to put up with a lot of oh my god, I'm falling, oh my god, I'm slipping, oh my god, I can't jump, I can't leap.
One of the interesting parts were like the whole idea of sand, right? And I've seen, if I could say, our part of dance world using like probably site-specific films and stuff like that. So we've explored, I would probably say, much more physically challenging movements in rough terrains. And I've seen films where performers could take that, and I was so confident that Indian classical dancers will be able to pull that off. It's just psychological barrier that you have to kind of go through. And it actually started as a joke in one of the rehearsals. And then I said, maybe let's just go for it and try. And then, and also the whole idea of having the state auditorium accept to place the sand on top of it. So it was just 2 days before the film that we decided to
Actually, there were 2-3 choices that were given. One is to have a big, huge tree. We get a huge tree, which is onto the stage is one thing. So I said, then she mentioned to me that, Pino Bosch, she shared that particular film with me, saying that, I said, the Pino Bosch also does some other things like, filling up the entire stage with water. So how will we do it? And I was very skeptical about that. But finally, when you see the effect of it, of course, I'm totally convinced that Srinath was 100%.
No, he knew what he was recommending, and that was my only confidence, is that okay, he knows what he's doing. But I didn't realize it would be that challenging to do my leaps and jumps on the sand. So, but
I think
it
it's
was
also
fine.
kind of really probably for the viewers, my hope is that Indian classical dancing and the movement can now be presented in different spaces in a much more comfortable way. So it's sort of like a psychological barrier.
Yeah.
From the black mats and the wooden floors to the temple premises, I think you probably can do it in the water or under the water. I'm not sure, right? So there's so much to kind of explore, but I think this probably will be the start of many exciting mediums to come.
Every time I said something, Srinath would be like, welcome to the world of filmmaking. This is how it is. Please just do it.
We need to explore more of that. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. For our viewers, this is the team of Mahākālī, Anuradha ma'am, the choreographer, Srinath, the director, Katyayani, the performer. Mahākālī will premiere on January 22nd on Tickle as a part of Ghora Festival. The festival runs from Jan 21st to 23rd. It is available for viewing till the 31st. Please buy your tickets. Watch and encourage these artists. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srinath.
Thank you.
Thanks for this. Is the final already now done? We saw the...
I think we are still live on YouTube.
I think we're live. Let's leave the meeting and then maybe we'll talk.